But again, we're looking at a almost like a Chinese puzzle box, a lie within a lie within a lie within a lie,
Yeah.
which gets us now to NASA landing on the moon and the huge, cottage industry which grew up overnight that we never went to the moon. If you're NASA,
And can you blame them, Richard? You see so many errors. You talked about a director. You have another director that's often mentioned here, Stanley Kubrick,
right?
in relation to the footage.
Well, Stanley Kubrick actually is quoted somewhere that he could never have pulled off, the fake lunar landing. Now you can do individual images, but you can't create the backdrop. So what I think they've done in some of the scenes from Apollo is they've simply altered the backdrop. Because you take what's there and then you modify it. But you got real stuff and fake stuff in the same picture.
Yeah, like flags that's blowing when there's no wind, stuff like that.
No, that's not. No, that's inertia. That's when you're putting the flag in and you're twisting that pole.
Okay.
The inertia will make, because the flag was not just a flag; it was on a wire.
Right.
That was developed by an engineer at Houston and he went actually to Kmart or Walmart or someplace and bought a Dacron flag because that was a kind of a last minute thought to put a flag on the mission, to have the astronauts plant a flag. And he had to put it on a wire and it actually didn't unfold properly, so it's crinkled. So no, that's misinformation. That's not understanding basic.
I see. So you assert actually that the footage is real. It's just manipulated.
Oh, absolutely. And that's not even manipulated. It's just if you're trying to put this extended flag on a wire into the lunar surface, which is mysteriously much harder than they imagined. It was really, really, really almost like rock hard consistency instead of fluffy dust. So they really had to work to put the flagpole down in it so it wouldn't fall over. And when they left the lunar landscape on the ascent stage of the lunar module, you can see in some of the film that the flag is whipping around in the exhaust thrust from the rockets, and then a couple of them actually do fall over. So we got some.
It's so good that you tell us this. In fact, we ought to have just a show debunking every of these claims, because it can be explained by science, can't it? And manipulation.
Well, the thing that debunked the whole thing for me is that I am a reporter. I am working for CBS News. I'm working for the special events division of CBS News. I'm working for Walter Cronkite. I'm out at JPL the summer of Apollo, July, and we're at the North American Rockwell Corporation. I built a huge walk-through solar system so that our correspondents could actually talk about the future of the space effort after Apollo, after the moon. And we had some guests, very famous guests, walking through that walk-through solar system. But after the guys left the moon, the New York called us up and said, okay, we want you to move up the street from Downey, California, a few miles up the freeway to JPL, because NASA had arranged to have 2 flybys of Mars, Mariner 6 and Mariner 7, that same week, later in the week, dictated by celestial mechanics. So we packed up everything, and we moved up the freeway up to the shadow of the San Gabriel Mountains there at JPL in Pasadena. And when I walked in the press room, everybody who's anybody in the mainstream press in those days was covering space launches. New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post.
Yeah, it was the big event, obviously.
Yeah. And we had hundreds of correspondents from other countries, like Japan and Italy and England.
And we had our Norwegian Walter Cronkite too present.
Well, everybody had a Walter Cronkite.
Yeah.
I forget who the guy at the BBC was. I actually met him. Howard Dimbleby, I think, was his name. Very proper British gentleman.
Yeah.
Anyway, so space was huge.
Yep.
So we along with a whole bunch of other people, we transferred our attention from Apollo. The astronauts were safely on their way home, and we went to JPL to cover the robotic mission, Mariner, I think it was Mariner 6, that was supposed to fly by Mars later that week. Walked in the press room at JPL, set up, we all had little desks and assigned places in the auditorium so we could ask questions during press conferences and all that. And suddenly I saw this guy walking around the press room, stopping at every one of the major mainstream, both domestic and international correspondents with their reporters, their television setups and all this, handing out little packets of something.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally, I wandered over, and I'm standing, along with a kind of a covey of all these journalists. This guy is dressed like somebody out of Easy Rider or an old Western film. He had one of those big kind of duster greatcoats on they used to wear in the days of
spaghetti Western.
Kind of, it was a big, light-colored, tannish-colored greatcoat.
Okay.
And he's got this little...
Sounds very Cloak and Dagger.
And he's got this little satchel, and he's handing out little packets to all the press people. Like,
hang on, was he an official NASA man? I mean,
no.
For all you could determine there and then.
He was not dressed like any NASA guy I ever saw.
No.
There was no button-down, shirt. There was no pocket protector, no little black string tie, no crew cut. He was... I think he had a cowboy hat. He was wearing this... Western duster, a big duster. They used to call it a duster because it protected you in cattle stampedes or trail drives from the dust.
Oh, right.
All right. And he's got this satchel over his shoulder, like a Pony Express satchel, a big satchel. And he's got these little things, and he's handing one to every reporter. So I get one, and it turned out to be a mimeographed sheet with an American flag printed on aluminized mylar. Mylar is a space-age material that DuPont originally developed to wrap bread in until they found that housewives would starve because they could never open the bread wrappers. And then the Mylar balloon of the Echo balloon series, and it became a vacuum-plated insulation material on all kinds of spacecraft. All the gold stuff you see on the lunar module, that's Mylar with gold sprayed on it in the vacuum. So he hands out this very space-age thing. He looks like somebody out of the 18th century, great Western tradition. And he's got this Pony Express pouch, and he's handing people these packets. It includes this Mylar flag and this little pamphlet. So I start reading the pamphlet. And the pamphlet is claiming that Americans who right now are en route back from the moon, Aldrin and Armstrong and Collins are in the command module and service module headed back there. They're about halfway between Earth and the moon, headed back to a splashdown in the Pacific, as this guy is walking around an official NASA press room giving out a pamphlet which says, drum roll, it's all fake. NASA never went to the moon. It was all shot on a studio set in Nevada.
Wow.
I described this in my
This is live. As it's happening, he's doing this.
Yes.
To everyone. To the top echelon of media.
All the top mainstream press all over the world that are focused on the next NASA mission.
Incredible.
And are still covering, of course, the Apollo mission because the astronauts are not home safely yet.
And if I was a random person, I couldn't just go in there, could I? If I was not connected to anything?
No. In fact, these press guys, the NASA press office, they tried to keep Robert Heinlein out during the Viking mission one night.
Right.
Their security was so tight. They wouldn't let Heinlein in, who'd written about missions to Mars and all that, until, of course, some of us all stood up in the press room and said, "Are you guys nuts?" And then they relented and they gave him a pass and all that. So getting in there, not just anybody could walk in off the street. What made it even more interesting, and I again report all this in the opening to Dark Mission, The Secret History of NASA, he was being squired around the press room by an official NASA representative named Frank Bristow, who worked for JPL. He was the press guy working with the news media. His boss was a guy named Frank Costello, and he was part of the overall public affairs office, which worked with universities and non-media, non-news people. News people had a deadline, so we got special, kind of special attention.
But when you were handed this, you obviously must have thought it was a joke. Did people laugh? How did they react?
Well, we had so many weird people show up in the press room because it just was kind of like, a NASA Woodstock. Every 2 or 3 years, and weird people would show up.
Yeah.
Even not being a Star Trek conference, they would show up in costume.
Yeah.
Of course, they turned away. So to me, I just thought this was somebody who knew Frank, because I knew Frank pretty well. And he just let him in because it was such a joke. It was like an inside joke. It was like, look at the the wild aspects of our culture responding to landing on the moon and all that. And I did not save the packet. I didn't save the little mylar flag. I didn't save the mimeoed, 2-page sheet. Oh, I wish.
Well, how could you know? Back then, you were also mainstream. You went into suspicion or anything back then, right?
Not really, no.
You were blue-eyed.
I believe NASA was, the best thing since sliced bread, because it was opening up doorways to a future. I mean, I always have the opinion that if we're all stuck on Earth, we're going to die. We've got to get off this planet for the human species to survive. I did not realize that we've been off Earth an awful lot before. That came later, the whole antediluvian high-tech civilization meme.
Yep.
But I still was a booster for NASA. I was what they would call now a fanboy, because NASA was the cutting edge. And to have a president announce we were going to land on the moon on behalf of all mankind in an era where we were threatening each other with nuclear weapons, I mean, that appeared to be a pretty unifying goal, to go somewhere on behalf of all mankind.
We came in peace. Yep.
And the idea that NASA would have layers and layers and wheels within wheels and hidden agendas and secret missions and secret, research projects, that never back then occurred to me. It never occurred to any of us.
No.
But this stood out as a really interesting anomaly, and I write about it in some detail in the opening of Dark Mission, because that to me was the birth of the "we never went to the moon" meme. And it was officially fostered by NASA. Now, if you go to the moon and your real mission is to go and find secret ET stuff, technology, artifacts, libraries, data, evidence of a previous civilization or many previous civilizations, and you can't let the world know that's your real mission, given to you by a president because he saw Corona spy satellite photographs of ancient ruins on the moon, it makes total sense that you would start a meme that would keep that part of the population, about the same percentage that voted for Donald Trump, by the way, about 30% now believe we never went to the moon. So you keep all those people who will ask questions, who will make noise, who will upset the apple cart, who will be the rabble-rousters. You keep them focused on a false meme, a false trail, a false puzzle.
This is known as a tactic. You have the same phenomenon in all controversial matters. I'll just give one example. Dr. Joseph Farrell has argued that you see the same strategy used in the Roswell case. Now, you have a phenomenon. On the one hand, you have the segment of population who won't believe it, the debunkers, right? So you give them swamp gas and weather balloons.
Okay.
Then you have the believers. You feed them the alien meme. And if the truth is, for instance, Nazi technology or at least human technology, voila, you have the perfect divide and conquer.
I agree.
This is exactly what's going on here too, because on the one hand, you have the official story. Yeah, we went there with traditional technology. We found some dust. Case closed. Then you have the no, we didn't go there, and buried in between, in the synthesis of the thesis and the antithesis, the secret space program.
Well, I have more data. Remember, I love data. So we fast forward the film from July 1969, an official NASA press person squiring around a guy who's handing out a pamphlet saying, we never went to the moon, it's all a hoax, as the astronauts are still not back on Earth. All right, so you plant the meme. Then you fast forward the film to maybe 10 years later, where this kind of really takes root, and there's websites, and Fox did a special, and they talked to some engineers, and they talked to some other folks, and Apollo could never have worked the way it was purported to be, and the LEM weighed too little, and the door wasn't big. I mean, there's a million reasons for why Apollo was a hoax, according to these people. And it has an incredible public resurgence.
It does.
In contradiction, an honest space writer, who I used to know, at least back when he was honest, named James Ober, offers to...
Hey, is he related to the Nazi Obert in
I don't
NASA?
know. I don't know.
Wouldn't surprise me.
No, that was von Puttgeimer. That was Jesko von Puttgeimer, who definitely was a Nazi, and who came down on me back when I didn't know what I know now, like a ton of bricks, and I could never understand why I became his enemy number one. Now I kind of understand, because they were worried that I would be on a trail that ultimately might lead where we are now this evening.
Yeah, but I was referring to Hermann Obert, I think is his name.
Oh, no, Oberg, O-B-E-R-G, as opposed to Oberth.
Right.
Yeah, right. Hermann Oberth was totally no relation to James. James Oberg was a science writer. He actually was a propulsion engineer. He worked on the shuttle program. His specific specialty was the hydrazine tanks for the auxiliary power units, I believe. I may be getting that wrong.
Oh, this is the chap who has attacked your book so much, isn't it?
Now, he's attacked me. He's attacked Ken Johnston.
Crazy guy.
He's a professional paid debunker.
Yes.
And we now know he worked for the Air Force. He was Air Force intelligence.
There you go.
At one point. And he and I were best friends up until I got into the subject of Cydonia.
Uh-huh.
And then suddenly our friendship disappeared, like snow on the sun side of Mercury. It just, poof, gone. And I could never...
Well, that's a nice corroboration of you being onto it then.
Well, possibly. Anyway, so Oberg, Mr. Skeptical, Mr., NASA, of course NASA went to the moon. I work for NASA. He offers to write for NASA a book totally taking on the moon hoax crowd and debunking all their, pun intended, lunatic ideas based on the Apollo record of how we didn't go.
Okay.
And for like, the blink of an eye, he actually has a NASA contract. Like I had a NASA contract to do a book out of Goddard years ago. He has a NASA contract to do this book until one morning he doesn't. NASA pulls all his funding. And he suddenly is an author with an idea with no publisher. So why did NASA suddenly withdraw their support from James Oberg, who was going to write a book proving that NASA went to the moon?
I get it. They don't want it.
Answer, because if he started digging around as a guy with all his contacts and as a journalist with umpteen aerospace connections, he would find out, oh my God, it was a cover story. Not only did they go, but oh my God, look what they really found.
Yeah, that, plus if he really manages to convince people, then we won't have this distraction out there that NASA needs.
Exactly.
Yep.
Then people will start focusing on, well, if NASA did go to the moon, what did they really find?